I knew a simple soldier boy who grinned at life in empty joy, slept soundly through the lonesome dark, and whistled early with the lark. In winter trenches, cowed and glum, with crumps and lice and lack of rum, he put a bullet through his brain. No one spoke of him again. You, smug-faced crowds with kindling eye, who cheer when soldier lads march by, sneak home and pray you'll never know the hell where youth and laughter go. Siegfried Sassoon, suicide in the trenches. All right, folks, welcome to the Battles of the First World War podcast. So, my name is Mike, and this is my new project after having completed the Battle of Verdun podcast last year. For those of you guys who listen to the Verdun podcast, yes, that is GarageBand's Orchestra Strings 03 as the intro music there. So, doing that podcast was great fun. So, here we are with a new series of episodes that will dive into the details of the big and small battles of World War I. If you're new to this podcast, haven't heard the Verdun podcast before, if you want an idea of how this series will be written and presented, please listen to the Battle of Verdun podcast episodes. You can find those episodes on iTunes, Libsyn, Stitcher, and Tumblr, as well as through the Battle of Verdun podcast page on Facebook, or through that podcast website, www.battleofverdunpodcast.com. So, why do another podcast on World War I when by now we're in the middle of the war's centenary and everybody's doing World War I podcasts? So there are three main reasons for getting into this new project. First, my niche will be to get into the weeds of these battles, clashes, skirmishes, to really go into the details of why and how they unfolded. I'm going to do my best to bring the events of the war and the men involved to life. I will work to keep the combat side of these battles in context with what was going on in the world and on the home front during them as applicable, but my goal is not to provide a narrative history of the entire Great War itself. That mammoth task I leave to podcasters far braver than me, namely the Great War podcast and the History of the Great War podcast. If you need some background on the First World War, please feel free to go check them out first. Worthy podcasts. Why cover battles of World War I anyway? Wasn't it just the same pattern with these battles, especially on the Western Front? This would be the general pattern. 1, massive artillery barrage. 2, human wave attacks with catastrophic losses. 3, the front lines shift by maybe a mile if you're lucky. 4, repeat steps 1 through 3 until your generals are satisfied. In a very, very, very simplistic sense, that was the rough pattern. But the battles of the Great War, as brutal and sadly wasteful as they could be, also gave very painful birth to the modern warfare we see today. These battles and the conduct of the entire war itself give us our general sense of what we feel war is like today. The human wave formations of 1914 gave way very slowly to small platoons of hardened troops rushing forward in 1918 while supported by tanks and buzzing aircraft. This is what we call combined arms tactics today. Some armies learned faster than others. While indeed, in the case of the generals, there were donkeys leading lions, many of those donkeys were as stumped as everyone else on how to break the global stalemate. Some of them constantly sought ways out of it, and I hope to show some of this. Second, the battles of the First World War contain the stories of thousands upon thousands of men who lived through, fought in, and died in those battles. Each and every man, every unit, every army has a story that shouldn't be forgotten. What is our history but our stories? These stories deserve to be told because the men who made these stories happen to have stories that deserve to be told. They lived, they died, and once they were part of our earth. With this story thread, I'm going to veer off for a moment and lay out the plan for this podcast series. First story I'm going to cover is the story of the Battle of the Somme in 1916. I've got to do the Somme, which is an Anglo-Franco-German story, and the 100th anniversary of its terrible beginning is fast upon us. Also, I did the podcast for Verdun, and if you do Verdun, well, you really need to do the Somme too. The two go together. Then, I'd like to do the saga of the Ypres salient for that 100th anniversary, with all of the battles there, 1, 2, and 3. After that, I'd really like to get into a particular group whose story I would like to tell, particularly to the English-speaking world, and that is the story of the French army during World War I. This is my third reason for this project. To get perfectly simplistic and to paint with a really, really wide brush, here in the US, it's all about that World War II and our involvement in it. Understandable, really. In the UK, I suspect pop history may give attention more evenly to both world wars, although Great Britain's World War II story is generally more uplifting than the World War I tale. Here in the US, when we think of World War I at all, it is of course in relation to how we fought in it, and of course, how we won it for the Allied team. Again, I'm just painting with a broad brush. But we do not often recall or realize that when the US joined the Allies in 1917, Britain, France, and Belgium had already been in the trenches for 3 long years. If we're good, we may know about the British Army's Black Day on the 1st of July 1916 on the Somme, and maybe even a little bit about Passchendaele. But we never hear too much about the bloody crucible the French Army went through between 1914 and 1918. During the Great War, the Republic of France mobilized some 8.5 million men. Of that number, over 1,300,000 were killed, with a further staggering 5 million plus wounded. The French army fought the Central Powers on nearly every battlefront of the war, and in each front they showed what they were made of. This was a tough and willing, if frequently misused, army of determined Frenchmen from all walks of life come together to repel the invader. Yet in the English-speaking world, we do not hear enough of it, and that may be due to the availability of English language resources. But as we are in the centenary of the Great War, that situation is changing. New books on the French are being published, and new translations are also popping up much more frequently. I really hope to tap into some of these resources and bring the life and times of the French poilu to new life for you folks out there. So, the podcast will have a very heavy lean towards the Western Front for the foreseeable future. But I do hope to get to the other fronts as well. The Italian front is fascinating to me. I know far too little of the Balkans or of the war in the seas. My knowledge of the Eastern Front is embarrassing, apart from Tannenberg. And then there's the war in Africa, which seems like a hot mess, where a wily German general continuously kept the Allies guessing and running around in circles for years. And of course, don't forget the Middle Eastern Front, with all of its implications for our world today. I will strive to cover each battle consistently by having the necessary episodes written and recorded beforehand, as best as I can. We all walk into these podcasts with the best of intentions, but once reality hits, schedules change. But what it means is that in between each battle to be covered, I will be off air while reading, writing, and recording the episodes for the next battle. And there we go. That's the loose plan for this podcast series. So stick with me, guys, and we'll get into the details for how the various fights for Vimy Ridge played out. We'll jump off with the Germans and launch the Gorlice Tarnov offensive. We'll go over why the Somme front was chosen as the spot for the 1916 Combined Allied Offensive. We'll pound sand with the Allies in the Mesopotamian campaign against the Ottomans in 1917, and more. A lot more. So, here we go. Next episode coming up, we will be starting the story of the Battle of the Somme. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact me at verdunpodcast@gmail.com or through the Battles of the First World War podcast Facebook page. We're even on Instagram as well with the World War I Battle Podcast. And don't forget to check the website as well, www.firstworldwarpodcast.com. All right, talk to you again soon. Take care.